Outgoing Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger declaring a state of emergency in California, fiscal that is, and presenting his last budget proposal to close nearly $10 billion of the state's budget shortfall, a plan quickly scoffed at by Democrats. So what now? What's in the future for the state? David Crane, a special advisor to Governor Schwarzenegger, joins us from San Francisco. David, great of you to be here. It looks like that the lawmakers in California want to hold off until Jerry Brown takes office, but if they don't want cuts, how do they fix the state's budget problems?
They're going to have cuts, and they're going to have to address the long-term issues, especially of the public pension system in California, where we've amassed enormous amounts of hidden debt that are going to be taking enormous sums from the state budget for years to come.
Well, ultimately, don't they have to fess up as to how big the pension problem is? Do you really know how big of a time bomb it is right now?
Well, we know, but you're right, they haven't fessed up to it. You know, the accounting of public pension funds in the United States is scandalous. It's reminiscent of what happened at Lehman Brothers and AIG and elsewhere, where you had massive amounts of debt that were not reflected on or even off balance sheet. In California, we commissioned a study last year, the governor did, or earlier this year, from Stanford University, that told us that our pension debt was 10 times what our public pension funds were reporting it to be. Instead of $50 billion, it was $500 billion. And that explains in part why our costs of servicing retirement benefits have grown 400% in the last 10 years. Those costs are doubling every 4.5 years. We're spending $6.5 billion this year on servicing that debt. It'll be $30 billion a year in 10 years.
So it's literally the austerity of many ultimately to rescue a few, those receiving public pensions in the state.
Yes, and I can't even say that it's just to rescue a few. It really, the fault lies with the politicians who agreed to these pensions without setting the money aside. You can't blame the workers for seeking the benefits and the salaries, but you can blame the politicians who for years have agreed to pensions without putting the money on the balance sheet and without funding the obligation. And that's what's left this enormous deficit.
Well, there's a very interesting bill that was introduced by three House Republicans last week that would deny states and localities the ability to issue tax-exempt bonds, which they thrive. I mean, they live off of these tax-exempt bonds unless they report their pension fund liabilities to the Treasury Department. Do you think that has legs? Do you think that this is a big first step to really uncovering what the pension liabilities are nationwide?
I do think it has legs. I think it's a very intelligent approach to say to the states who are dependent upon the federal government, dependent upon federal taxpayers for a tax subsidy in the form of tax-exempt debt, to say to them, if you're going to use the subsidy we give you, you have to at least honestly report the amount of debt that you've already issued. And so I think it's a wonderful idea, and I hope it does have legs.
David, it was great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And this is a story that we'll cover over and over and over again. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, Dave.